Good afternoon and welcome into the College Football Recruiting Show. I'm Grace Remington with Cooper Patagna. Before we get started, you already know what I'm going to ask you. Please like this video and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. So, Coop, let's get into our top headlines, not waste any more time, shall we? Earlier in the week, Texas Tech landed 2024 five-star wide receiver Micah Hudson. The in-state talent is the highest-ranked commit in Texas Tech history. The Red Raiders beating in-state rivals Texas and Texas A&M for Hudson's pledge. Coop, how impressive is this recruiting win for Joey McGuire and his staff?
It's a huge win, almost monumental, right? You talked about the highest graded commit in program history for Joey McGuire. 0-2 start to the 2023 season. Tough loss against Wyoming on the road, and then a tough loss against Oregon as well. But this guy is a program builder that you can build around for the long haul. Big get for Joey McGuire.
Florida State commit five-star safety KJ Bolden will take an unofficial visit to Georgia this weekend. The Peach State native has been committed to the Noles since August. Coop, what's your level of concern for FSU right now?
It just never ends. He committed like 5 weeks ago, right? Now Georgia's back in the picture on campus this weekend in Athens for the South Carolina game. I don't know if it's more of concern. It's just the way college football is. You have to battle for guys like this, a caliber of player like a five-star like KJ Bolden. So this is going to go down to the wire, even though he's committed to Florida State. But that's the cost of doing business in today's college football.
Our Steve Wiltfong has more on Bolden's status coming up. The number 6 player in the 2024 rankings, five-star defensive lineman Aiden Breland, has narrowed his list to 3 schools, Georgia, Miami, and Oregon, his final 3. He told our Greg Biggins that he still does not have a time frame for his decision. Coop, which school do you think fits Breland best?
Is it cliche? I'm going to go with Georgia, the 2-time defending national champions. 25 players drafted in the last 2 years. That is a record in college football history. I don't know. I mean, if you're a defensive lineman, how can you not play in Athens? This would be a huge get for Kirby Smart in Athens. That defensive line room right now, absolutely loaded.
And five-star quarterback Bryce Underwood will take an unofficial visit to Colorado this weekend for the Buffs game against Colorado State. The top quarterback in the 2025 cycle was originally scheduled to visit for the Week 5 game against USC, but has taken the trip a little bit sooner. So, Coop, how do you feel about this growing buzz with Bryce Underwood in Colorado?
It's the prime effect. It was LSU, Michigan. That's kind of what it felt like for the Michigan native. Now Colorado's in there. That's what you got to worry about with Deion Sanders. Colorado 2-0. Who's the guy after Shedeur Sanders? That's what people want to know. Bryce Underwood, he's a 2025. He's a junior in high school. Could he reclass? I think it makes a lot of sense, but obviously a lot to like in the budding relationship between Bryce Underwood and Deion Sanders.
Here with the latest in the recruiting world. Steve, we will start with KJ Bolden visiting Georgia this weekend for the South Carolina game. In August, he committed to FSU, but Georgia's still pushing for this five-star flip. What's the message they're trying to convey to Bolden as they try to keep him in his home state?
That you can stay home and play early at the powerhouse program. If anything, Georgia is recruiting KJ Bolden even harder, which is hard to do with how vigorously they recruited him the first time around. So they're going to get him back to campus. They're going to get him around the recruiting class that's ranked #1 nationally. A lot of those guys are going to be back between the hedges as well, and they're just going to show him the product on the field, get him around the staff again, and hope it moves the needle a little bit. KJ Bolden's got future visits scheduled to Florida State. Going to be there for the Clemson game. Looking to be at the Virginia Tech game. He may even go to Florida State's game at Clemson. So this is an uphill climb for Georgia, but they have not stopped recruiting him. KJ Bolden and his family still maintaining communication with Kirby Smart, Fran Brown, and that coaching staff. And Georgia will try and make a move this weekend, getting him around the game atmosphere, the fans, and the guys in the recruiting class.
Steve, the Bulldogs host South Carolina this weekend in the CBS Game of the Week. Between the hedges, five-star defensive lineman Aiden Breland will be in from California. He's already taken his official visit there. He's in for an unofficial visit. Also, 3-star defensive lineman Makai Burrow, former defensive line commit of the Florida Gators. He'll be there as well. Big target for Georgia. Where do the Bulldogs stand for these two?
Yeah, as the Bulldogs try and put the finishing touches on this #1 ranked class, these are 2 of their top remaining targets. And Aiden Breland, there's been so much buzz and smoke around Oregon with Aiden Breland. And there were times where I would have maybe even put Miami in the driver's seat. And this young man just released his top 3. Greg Biggins had the story. Georgia, Oregon, and Miami, the 3 finalists. But there are people that I talked to this week to think that Aiden Breland will ultimately end up at Georgia. Big visit this weekend to get him back on campus. It's an opportunity for him to also play early at Georgia, get in that rotation as a young player. They've been recruiting him as strongly as anybody on the board. And like I said, there are people around the Athens program that like the chances that Georgia has coming into this visit. And then Burrow, he recently decommitted from Florida. There was already a lot of smoke about Georgia's position before he announced his decommitment. So really like where Georgia stands with him as they try and add one of the more massive players at the point of attack this cycle to what is already a terrific defensive line haul.
Hey, Steve, you and I haven't done a show in a while, so you know what I'm really missing in my life? I am missing the likes happy dance. There we go. Let's get some likes on this video. Remember to please subscribe to the 24 Sports YouTube channel if you haven't already. Moving on with recruiting news, Steve. Georgia, not the only SEC team with a big recruiting weekend. The Swamp hosting 2 coveted targets during the Tennessee-Florida rivalry game. Defensive lineman LJ McCray and safety Xavier Mincy. They are 4-star teammates from mainland Daytona Beach. So what are you hearing on this in-state duo?
Yes, Florida looks to put the finishing touches on a class that ranks number 3 nationally. And I love the way that they've really recruited the defensive line in front 7 over the last 2 cycles under Billy Napier and company. LJ McCray could possibly be the best of the bunch of anybody that they've recruited over that span. And so LJ McCray, he's kind of wanted to take his decision process into the season so he could watch these teams play and have that be a factor in his decision, as he strongly considers Georgia, who I mark as the team to beat, Florida's who I've had in the 2-hole there. Then Florida State and Miami are certainly contenders, and he saw Florida State beat LSU, saw that defense flying around making plays. He was in Coral Gables area to watch Miami beat Texas A&M. So Florida State and Miami made statements in front of LJ McCray about where their programs are at and why he should strongly consider them. This is a huge opportunity for Florida to do the same against an 11th ranked Tennessee team. Florida, he's been camping at Florida since middle school. He's been high on the Gators for a long time. Great relationship with Coach Chaos and that coaching staff. And if they can get a win against the Vols in front of LJ McCray, I think that really continues to show the trajectory of the program. And then Xavier Mincy, I think Florida's always felt good about their position there. The buzz around that recruitment has said that the Gators have been one of the top programs, if not the top program in his recruitment. And prior to Florida playing Tennessee, I'm expecting several Gators coaches to be at these guys' game on Friday night to continue to show the big priority that they are as they try and finish up this recruiting class ranked number 3 nationally.
Steve, everything is coming up Colorado and Deion Sanders through 2 weeks of this season. They got another big one this week when Colorado State comes to town, and a lot of visitors making their way to Boulder, but the headliner, 4-star offensive lineman Jordan Seaton from IMG Academy, and I hear there also might be a couple other names joining him in Boulder this well.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to see Jordan Seaton play last Friday, and it was easy to see why he's one of the most coveted players left on the board in this 2024 recruiting cycle. And a lot of the programs that we talked about around his recruitment have been Alabama, who he's named as his leader in the summer, and reiterated that here early in the fall. Ohio State, Oklahoma, 2 other schools that have been prominently in the mix for him much of his process. Florida's trying to be in there. Oregon's trying to be in there. Colorado's kind of the upstart program in Jordan Seaton's recruitment. He's just started mentioning them a couple weeks ago. When I talked to him this week about his Colorado visit, he said he's looking forward to exploring the new wave of college sports under Coach Prime. He wants to see everything for himself. So he's going to get out there for a night game in prime time at Colorado. And this is a program that could really start moving up the list as he goes out there and takes in that atmosphere and sees the direction of the program. Colorado, we've seen Deion Sanders get that spatula out and flip blue chippers over the course of his short college coaching career. They have their eyes set on Boo Carter. They were a finalist for him, the Tennessee product, when he committed to the Vols back in June. They're still communicating with him, going to get him back out for a game day visit now. He's already been out there a couple times before, so we'll see what kind of needle that moves. And then the big news last week, Bryce Underwood, the #1 quarterback in the country in the 2025 class, Colorado, moving into his short list of top contenders alongside LSU, alongside Michigan. Adam Munstereiger reporting that he will be on campus this weekend. We reported last week that we expected him there for the USC game, but now expected at Colorado this weekend. Just continues to show the excitement that Bryce Underwood and his family have for Colorado as they've really tried to push getting out there and seeing it. They wanted to get out there for the Nebraska game. That was a 10 a.m. local kickoff. This is a 10 p.m. Eastern time kickoff, much easier to get from Detroit to Boulder for this one, and Colorado trending up for Bryce Underwood and maybe several other blue chippers. Some of their commits are going to be back this weekend, Aaron Butler, Danny O'Neal. So it's going to be an exciting recruiting weekend at Colorado as they host some of the nation's best in 2024 and in 2025.
Yeah, that Bryce Underwood recruitment, more proof that the prime effect is real. Speaking of quarterbacks, Steve, Notre Dame scoring almost 48 points a game. That's 12th best in the nation thanks to their new look offense with Sam Hartman. But once Hartman leaves, they have a top 5 quarterback prospect, CJ Carr, coming in with the 2024 class. After him, we're kind of looking at who's next. You have 4-star Bear Bachmeier visiting for the Central Michigan game. But what are you hearing with this situation?
Grace, one of my favorite things about what Marcus Freeman has been able to do since he's become the head coach at Notre Dame is really improve the way that the Irish have recruited the quarterback position. You mentioned CJ Carr, but they also landed top 247 quarterback Kenny Minchey in the 2023 cycle. CJ Carr in 2024, and they're in on 2 of the most touted guys at the position in 2025. And as you said there, as Tom Loy from our Notre Dame site reported earlier, Bear Bachmeier from Marietta Valley, California, expected to visit this weekend, top 247 passer. Notre Dame looks like the one to beat going into this visit. Could he jump into the fold? Will he not? Time will tell there, but I think that it's clear that Notre Dame has emerged as the program to watch for Bear Bachmeier coming into his visit to South Bend. But Notre Dame is also at or near the top of the list for another top 247 signal caller out of Mississippi, the Deuce Knight, who they've had to campus a couple times. I know his family's high on Notre Dame. I know that Coach Gino Guidaldi, Coach Gerard Parker, the company have done a great job recruiting him. He was supposed to come to the Ohio State game next weekend, but not sure that his high school football schedule is going to allow that. But this could be a case, guys, who's ready to jump in first for the Irish. Will it be Deuce Knight? Will it be Bear Bachmeier? But one thing we know for sure is that the best quarterbacks in the country are interested in Notre Dame, and Marcus Freeman and company are capitalizing on that on the trail.
Steve, let's finish with 4-star defensive lineman Brian Robinson out of the state of Ohio, the crystal ball. It's been on the Wolverines for quite some time, but I'm hearing there's a little bit of smoke with Kentucky right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You're hearing correctly. I think Kentucky's really starting to trend for Brian Robinson. Vince Marrow, Coach Stoops and company have always done a fantastic job recruiting the state of Ohio. And while I liked Michigan early in the process for Brian, really starting to like Big Blue Nation here for Kentucky. They've had him on campus this fall already, and he's not the only one that I could see Michigan ultimately getting a recruiting win on. Michigan here. Michigan's got 2 4-star defensive linemen committed, twins, Gerard Smith and Jacob Smith. They were at Kentucky's opener in Lexington. They're actually playing their senior seasons in the state of Kentucky at Corbin High, and I really think that Kentucky is trending there. My crystal ball is on Kentucky. Brian Doan's crystal ball is on Kentucky for those 2 to ultimately flip to the Wildcats. Now, there was a time where Michigan maybe looked like they stemmed that tide there, but again, the intel is now really heavy pointing towards Kentucky for them to flip the Smith twins and ultimately land Brian Robinson and add them to an intriguing recruiting class that has 17 commits right now.
All right, Steve Wiltfong with the latest. Thanks for joining us. For more analysis from him and the rest of our staff, subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel and turn those notifications on so you never miss a breakdown of your favorite recruit, a game preview, the occasional hot take. We got those too, keeping you entertained and up to date here at 24/7 Sports. Now, there's a lot of ways to describe the top offensive lineman in the country. This is how our scouting team is describing him Overwhelming, intimidating, physical? Yeah, that checks out. His name is Brandon Baker, and our own Blair Angulo sat down with the 5-star offensive tackle before his upcoming decision day.
The finish line is in sight for 5-star Brandon Baker. The nation's #1 rated offensive tackle is down to 5 schools: Florida State, Nebraska, Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas, with a commitment scheduled for Sunday, September 24th, right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. The talented blocker from Mater Dei has been busy paving the way up front for the top-ranked high school team in America, helping the Monarchs to a perfect 4-0 record ahead of this week's trip to the East Coast to battle St. Francis Academy in Baltimore. The big 6'5", 290-pound lineman will soon turn his attention to the final official visit before his big announcement, and it will happen this coming weekend when Baker gets out to Lincoln to see the Cornhuskers in the much-anticipated home debut of first-year head coach Matt Rule.
I would say really just the culture, really. Unfortunately, I had a loss against Colorado. The defense played real well. The offense still kind of shaky, so really just trying to see the culture that Coach Rule is, building down there. Watched a couple of interviews of the players. I really just see for myself, really. Coach Rule, he has a rich history of bringing programs down to, to the top with Baylor, and he was at the Panthers, so he knows what it looks like. Coach Raiola, he's Hawaiian, so Polynesian custom, so we kind of bond over that, and getting down there a couple times. This will be my third now. It's really just getting comfortable with them.
While the Huskers will get their big shot this weekend, Texas is a school that has been generating a lot of recent buzz with Baker, who found out during his own game Saturday night that the Longhorns had gone to Tuscaloosa and upset Alabama.
I mean, that's incredible. I have to go back and watch the film. One of my kind of concerns was how their culture was down there. So, you have to be doing something right in order to beat a school like Alabama. We have a great relationship. Coach Sark, is West Coast guy, so we kind of have that familiarity. And Coach Flood, he knows what it looks like. Them both coached at the Falcons together and Alabama together. So, really just trying to get developed by the best, honestly.
Oregon is another school that has been mentioned often with Baker. The Ducks have been in the picture for a while and have a family connection working in their favor. His older brother Gary played along the defensive line 4 years ago, and the coaches have been continuing to make a strong push for Baker and other recruits throughout Southern California, a precise blueprint that was further boosted when it became known that Oregon was bound for the Big Ten.
I honestly feel like Coach Lanning is one of the most, I'd say efficient head coaches right now. He's definitely loves to stay in contact with me as well as Coach Terry. They like to call themselves a law firm, so it's about 4 or 5 of the five coaches in the group chat. So really just trying to stay consistent and continue being in the loop.
It's 3 official visits down, 1 more to go as the clock continues to tick for Brandon Baker. He knows exactly what he will be looking for down the stretch as he tries to draw differences between the top contenders.
Really just trying to stay in the moment, really just take it all in. It's coming by fast. It's approaching real, in about 2 weeks now. So really just trying to be present, really. I would say a rich program, rich tradition, and/or programs that are on the rise. Like you said, Texas being Alabama, you have to be doing something right. So, being at a prestigious school like Mater Dei definitely set that foundation. Personally, Ohio State feels like a Mater Dei times 2 with that culture, with Coach Day and the program that they've built over time, and Texas with Coach Sark, and Oregon, and Nebraska and different schools like that. I'm Brandon Baker, 5-star offensive tackle. I will be announcing my commitment here on 24/7 Sports.
Love that. Thank you, Blair, for the interview. And you just heard it from Brandon Baker himself. He will be committing right here on Commitment HQ, September 24th, coming up soon. 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific time. There are his top 5 schools on the screen. Keep it locked into 24/7 Sports on YouTube for his decision. And with that, let's welcome in our Greg Biggins for more on the top offensive lineman as he gets closer to that commitment date. Greg, you've seen a lot of this modern day prospect, and I love his story. When he was younger, he wanted to play on the defensive line, but it seems like he was always destined to switch over to the O-line. Obviously, it's working out for him, but in your eyes, what makes him the top offensive lineman in this cycle?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of things. And Coop, ironically, I just read your eval on our Fearless spreadsheet and I agree with everything that you said about him. He's long. He's versatile. He's played guard early on at Mater Dei, freshman, sophomore year, switched over to right tackle. I think he's got a legit 83 wing. He's got good feet. He's an athlete. He's a kid who probably his walk around weight would be more like 270. So he's a pretty fluid kid. He's got just the right amount of nastiness that you want to see in a high school offensive lineman. I think that's going to translate really well. So high football IQ, very cerebral kid, very smart kid, always competes at a high level. And I think he can make a jump. I think me and Coop probably see it the same way. Maybe not as physically dominant as you would like to see. If we're talking previous offensive tackles who we would say OT1s, he's not a guy that's going to really pound you into the ground like a Francis Mauigoa, but just really efficient, knows the game, and plays hard. And I love his upside. Actually, I think he's got a chance to be really good and play on Sundays.
Biggie, Texas, Nebraska, Ohio State, all three of those programs know something about offensive line development. At the same time, Brandon Baker is the only offensive tackle ranked inside the top 32, which means he's the only 5-star. So what type of impact can he make for the school of his choice at the next level?
It's funny, Coop. I think we talked about, kind of similar things with DeAndre Carter, right? When he committed and playing out of school like Mater Dei, I think prepares you so well. Just because the coaching you get, the technique he's getting, and the level of competition he's already playing against. So when he goes to college at whatever school, he won't be wowed. He's not going to be in awe of the talent because he's already seen that talent. Obviously, not quite at that level, but he's going to see high-level talent every day in practice. They play an incredible schedule. Saying all that, I think he's talented enough to maybe be in that 2 deep. I personally would love to see every offensive lineman be able to redshirt, put on some good weight. You're going against men who are 3 years older than you are. So I think with Brandon right now, I think it would be good for him to go to college, get in that weight program, strength program, put on a good 10 to 15 pounds of good weight before he's ready to go. But I think he's a 3-and-out guy. I really believe that. I think whether he redshirts or plays, I think he's going to be a future 2-year starter, whether he's playing tackle, right or left, whether he slides inside and plays guard. I really believe he's a guy who's capable of being 3-and-out. That's all the kids' goals these days, right? 3-and-out and on to the NFL. And, talking to some of his coaches, again, Mater Dei's got a really storied history. They say he's probably the best we've ever had. So that's quite a statement from some of those coaches over there at Mater Dei.
All right, Greg Biggins joining us with the scouting report for the top offensive linemen in the country. Thanks so much. And just a reminder, you can watch Brandon Baker's commitment right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. That is September 24th at 8 o'clock Eastern. More commitment question marks in the Lone Star State. 2 of the top 5 prospects in Texas are still uncommitted. That would be athlete Terry Bussey out of Tipson and Kobe Black out of Connolly, Waco. So for more on their recruitments, let's welcome in our expert, Mike Roach. And Mike, we'll start with the 5-star athlete, Terry Bussey, who plans to commit later this month. Texas A&M, the crystal ball leader, but he was recently at Alabama with Texas and LSU still making a push for him. What's the latest in his recruitment?
It's hard not to feel good about where Texas A&M stands with him, but you do have to wonder after that weekend visit to Alabama last week, did the Crimson Tide make a move? Did Texas make a move with what he saw on the field in Tuscaloosa? Those are the big questions. Fortunately, I'll be out in the woods of East Texas tomorrow night seeing Bussey and Timpson in their game, so we'll be able to get a better update then. Love where A&M has stood in the long term, but we'll be interested to see if those schools can make a last-minute push.
Mike, a couple spots behind Terry Bussey is 5-star corner Kobe Black, and the crystal ball currently favors all Texas right now, including a crystal ball pick put in by you as well. Is that the current pulse of the recruitments, that it is all Longhorns?
Yeah, a source near Kobe Black told me in early September it kind of feels like a win and not if with Texas and him. But look, anything can happen down the stretch. LSU will get a visit. Oklahoma State's actually getting a few visits because his brother plays there. He's going on a lot of unofficial trips and will official to Stillwater as well. I still really like where Texas is in this, though. They've been putting in the work the longest in this recruitment. I think they have the most links to him. It's where he feels, I think, more comfortable. Texas A&M made a really heavy push during the summer, but I still really like Texas in this one.
quick reminder to please like this video if you haven't done so already. Mike, let's get to Texas Tech. The last time they finished with a top 25 recruiting class was all the way back in 2011. However, they've jumped back into that list thanks to the commitment of five-star receiver Micah Hudson, the highest-ranked commit in program history. Even Patrick Mahomes was tweeting about it, and I think he's got bigger things on his mind, so if Mahomes is tweeting about it, it's a pretty big deal. But how could this commitment kind of work as a catalyst in landing more elite prospects in Lubbock?
Well, I think it's going to have to work into next year. I think from talking to people in Lubbock, they're pretty close to their number as far as what they want to hit in this current class. I think that Micah Hudson was almost seen as the cherry on top of what they were building. Now, perhaps they'll add a couple more guys in 2024, but I think where you could see it have an effect is in maybe 2025, where these higher-end prospects see a player like him choose a program like Texas Tech that is seen as on the rise, and maybe they have the courage to follow and not maybe go the traditional route. I think that he's going to get on the field next year and he's going to make a lot of plays early. That can only help them in their push. It's hard to see it happening right now because, like I said, I do think they're kind of up against that class number that they're going for, but I do like where it helps them in future classes.
Mike, let's talk a little Texas A&M. 5-7 in 2022, 1-1, tough loss against Miami. They're 1-7 against their last 8 Power 5 opponents, but they also had the number 5 ranked recruiting class in the country. So what is the pulse with Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies right now on the recruiting trail?
I mean, they're a very good recruiting staff. They do a really good job when they zero in on their guys. They have a great visit experience when kids go to College Station. But I do think that the results on the field eventually will get to them, and they have already. I think last year when they had a slide, you saw them lose guys like Anthony Hill, who was on the field making plays for Texas on Saturday. The question is, how long can they hold out, and what is the stability going to look like in College Station? If there's more coaching turnover, if there are more questions about Jimbo Fisher's job, will they be able to hold that class together? I think that's the big thing. I don't think anybody's panicking right now, but I do think if they see more losses in bad fashion down the stretch, and there is more talk about turnover there, you will see that class potentially come apart.
So many storylines to track in the state of Texas, and Mike Roach is on top of it all. Thanks for joining us. And a reminder to please subscribe to 247sports.com for wall-to-wall team coverage, the best recruiting rankings, and transfer portal updates throughout the season. Michigan State head coach Mel Tucker was suspended without pay on Sunday. He is the subject of a Title IX investigation after multiple reports detailed accusations against him of sexual harassment. Defensive backs coach Harlan Barnett is the acting head coach moving forward. For a look into the program now, Stephen Brooks of SpartanTailgate joins us. And Stephen, you've reported that Barnett has started meeting with players and plans to do the same with staff members now. So how has he summarized the feelings of those in the program at the moment, and what are you hearing on the overall state of this team?
I started hearing it immediately on Sunday when the news broke, and it was doubled down on Monday from people near the program and inside the building that the vibe from the players was better than you would expect. I mean, obviously this is a lot to process for these kids. Completely blindsided, basically all of them in that building. So, but the vibe coming into this weekend's game against Washington, I mean, that's going to get you focused, right? And for all intents and purposes, Michigan State's season really starts this Saturday. With all due respect to Central Michigan and Richmond, this was always going to be the first real opportunity that we got to see what this team's actually all about. So I started hearing pretty early on that the vibes were more upbeat than you would think. There's a connectedness, a unity, sort of a us against them type of mentality that can be forged in situations like these. But then Harlan Barnett had his first press conference, and I think he evoked a lot of that same mentality and emotion of just sort of, rallying the troops, circling the wagons, and everyone being on the same page to just make the best of this. I mean, nobody wants to be in this situation, of course, but, there's still 10 games left to play. And these kids, whatever their goals are for next year, whether it's here, somewhere else, the NFL, they all still need good tape. These coaches, can't throw in the towel. So there's a lot still to play for, and everyone's just really kind of rallying behind each other.
Stephen, Harlan Barnett, he's had a long history in East Lansing. He played there. He also worked for Mark D'Antonio before in his previous stint. What can you tell us a little bit about Harlan Barnett, the recruiter?
Yeah, I think he's kind of an old school guy. I don't think he's going to show up with the flashy watch and the Jordans or anything like that, or any sort of hashtags, anything like that. He's not very active on social media, but he's a very engaging guy. He's a very disarming guy. That when you sit down and have a conversation with him, you kind of feel like you've known him for a little bit. He doesn't feel like he's this big time football coach necessarily. He just seems like he could be your neighbor, or somebody you work with or whatever. So he's a guy that I think is going to play hard on his experience. I mean, he's played for and Nick Saban and Bill Belichick in the NFL. And he's been where these guys want to go, right? He's been in the Michigan State standout. He was drafted into the NFL. And now, he's been very successful as a coach. I think he can point to a track record of development that I think is pretty appealing for folks. The top of his resume are two guys, Darqueze Dennard and Trey Waynes, who are nobody recruits. Trey Waynes was a 2-star out of Wisconsin, and Darqueze Dennard was I think only had one offer from Middle Tennessee coming out of Georgia way back when. He turned both of them into first-round picks. So he's got a track record of development. There's others too, overlooked DBs that he developed and turned into NFL players. So he's got a track record of making guys better than what they arrive as. And I think that's something that will play a lot. Now, can he sell the entire program? Can he recruit receivers and quarterbacks and running backs, all those things? We're going to find out, I guess. But he does have a track record of development, and he knows the place very, very well. So he can speak from the heart about what you're getting from the Michigan State experience.
From a recruiting standpoint, Michigan State's 2024 class is just inside the top 50. Only 13 commits. 2 of them are ranked inside the top 24/7. That's led by 4-star wide receiver Nick Marsh. But Stephen, when it comes to objectives on the trail, is the staff just trying to retain the commitments they already have, or are they still actively trying to bring prospects on board?
I'd say right now, even as we speak, guys, that's still kind of being hammered out in a certain way. I mean, this, as you can imagine, is really throwing the recruiting department, into chaos in some ways. But yeah, I think priority one, I heard Monday, Tuesday, things were just kind of at an overall halt. And beginning, Wednesday, as we move through the rest of the week, that it was more about, okay, let's move forward with a bit of a plan here. Harlan Barnett said he'd be reaching out individually to all their commits. The position coaches already did that, I believe, on Sunday right away. But I think retention has to be the top priority right now, because who's going to jump into the boat, for a program with no real clear direction right now? There's just, what are you committing to if you were to commit to Michigan State right now? So things have been slow. They got one commit last weekend, flipped a linebacker from Toledo and in-state, Jaden Walker. And before that, their last commit was Nick Marsh, who you mentioned, in late July. So they haven't been super hot on the trail necessarily. And I think at this point, you have to focus on keeping the guys you have, because trying to bring anybody else into the class is just going to be a really, really hard sell. And it remains to be seen how many of these guys are going to stick around, because they've been committed for a while. And, the picture they committed to is the picture's changed on them now. So I think retention has to be the top of the list. And communicating with 2025s, 2026s, those type of things can still move forward, because we're sort of selling the university as a whole, some of their resources, some of their facilities, infrastructure, that stuff. I know they're still going to hammer that, but 2024, I think you got to just circle the wagons and try to hold on to as many guys as you can.
Stephen, on the topic of roster retention, Michigan State's kind of in this ominous place right now, because if Mel Tucker does depart Michigan State, that opens up a 30-day window in which the players on that roster then can enter the transfer portal and have immediate eligibility, meaning there's not going to be a strike against them if they do decide to transfer. So I wonder, what is the expectation there in terms of keeping those guys home, committed to Michigan State, and what do you expect from a roster turnover standpoint?
I think there's potential for a lot of attrition on this roster, quite honestly. I mean, the way Mel Tucker had been recruiting, as you guys know, he expanded the map. It wasn't just a Midwest 4-hour radius type of approach that this program had for a long time under Mark Antonio. He was getting kids from California, Louisiana, Georgia, Texas, Florida. So, these guys have no sort of regional ties here, in a lot of respects. I think there's a good chance that a good piece of sort of the top third, maybe the middle third as well on this roster, is prone to be moving on. Whether they get straight up poached by another team and say, hey, here's what we can offer you, or they just want to move closer to home because this isn't what they signed up for. They brought in 13 4-star kids these last 2 classes, the first real recruiting classes that Mel Tucker could do and put together that weren't over Zoom. So the talent level was increasing here. I think you look at a lot of those kids, first and second year players on the roster today, as prime candidates to probably not be here again, or just players that Michigan State's really going to have to fight to keep. Now, there's comfort here to a degree of knowing your surroundings, knowing scheme, but how long is that going to be in place, assuming that a new staff comes in. So I think there's potential for a pretty serious amount of movement coming out of this season, and it could really set the next step back depending on who goes.
Looking at this upcoming weekend, Michigan State hosts Washington in a marquee non-conference game. This was supposed to be one of their biggest recruiting weekends of the year. So how does the situation impact the upcoming weekend and potentially additional weekends in the future?
Yeah, my understanding is right now, they do have a certain guest list ready and prepared, for this weekend. I'm not sure if all those kids are still going to make it. I'm sure some might reverse course and say, okay, I'm going to go over here now. I think the priority would probably be much more of a narrower scope in terms of regionality and proximity. Get some in-state guys up here on campus that you can keep in the fold, that you sort of have a natural advantage with. But it's going to be hard to bring up those kids that they wanted from Florida, Texas, all over the South, wherever. Again, there's no clear direction. What is the future going to look like for this program? What are things going to look like in 3 months? Nobody can tell them that. So if I'm a recruit, I'm not wasting the gas money personally. I'm not wasting the airfare. Now, if I'm over in Detroit, and I'm a sophomore, freshman or something, sure, of course you should come over and hang out and check that out, or Ohio, things like that. I just think the visits will probably be more confined to kids who are close by, who may be a little bit more on the edge in terms of are they takes or not, or are they sure they'll be takes in the future versus, as you said, this was really going to be, we hope, a big showcase opportunity for the program. And now I think they're just going to have to try to scramble and make do with whoever they can get over here. And again, leaning toward maybe younger classes and folks that are closer to campus that they can get sort of easily, because I just think they're going to have a hard time reeling people in from far away for a program that's in transition right now.
Stephen Brooks with the latest on the Michigan State situation. Thank you so much for joining us. And as this situation develops, be sure you stay tuned to Spartan Tailgate for the latest updates on MSU football and recruiting. Let's go to the Swamp now, where the Gators have the number 3 nationally ranked recruiting class in 2024, ranked number 2 in the SEC. You might not have realized that looking at the on-field products. Yeah, the work on the recruiting trail, much better. Let's see what Billy Napier can do with it, though, and bring in Jacob Rudner of Swamp 24/7 for a big recruiting weekend ahead as Florida hosts number 11 Tennessee. Jacob, we talked about it earlier in the show. Xavier Mincy and LJ McCray, the priority targets for the Gators, they will be at this game. But so will a lot of other talent from the 2024-25 classes. Give us a couple names that have caught your attention.
Yeah, there are a ton of names who are going to be in Gainesville this week. A couple at positions of major priority for the Gators. I would say that one of those is going to be 4-star athlete Cameron Michael, a guy out of Statesboro, Georgia, who is exceptionally talented, known for his speed. And the importance here is that the Gators are trying to add at wide receiver. They need one more piece in this class. That seems to be the feeling right now from the staff. Jeremiah Smith, who is the best wide receiver remaining in this class, who could still be available. A flip from Ohio State is going to be a challenge there. It's not impossible, but I would say it's unlikely at this point, and therefore guys like Cameron Michael will be crucial. And he is somebody who Florida wants to get on an official visit. Georgia is a major factor in that recruitment. But the Gators, of course, would love to be able to progress things there and try and steal a very good wide receiver out of his home state. The second person I would say is 2025 4-star quarterback Ryan Montgomery, a talented arm and somebody who I've been hearing has now risen to the top of Florida's want list for the 2025 class. He is a polished quarterback and somebody who has really done great to start his season, over 1,000 yards passing and double-digit touchdowns. Just somebody who I think could be, viewed as a game changer for this Florida program behind DJ Lagway in the 2024 class. He is a top target, and he will be on campus this weekend for the Tennessee game.
Jacob, I couldn't believe this stat when I first saw it, but Billy Napier went 0-4 against his main rivals last season, Tennessee, LSU, Georgia, and FSU. The surprising part is this. He was the first coach in school history to lose to all 4 in the same season. Even McElwain Muschamp Ron Zook escaped that dishonor. So that being said, how important is a win here against Tennessee for Florida?
Yeah, there's really no sugarcoating it. This is viewed as a critical game in Gainesville, one that could be program changing. I think that Billy Napier is aware of that. He spent time this week with the media talking about just the sheer importance of sealing a win from a ranked opponent, from a rival. You mentioned it, Grace. He does not have a win against a Florida rival since the start of his tenure. This presents the first opportunity. But really, this is a chance to avoid some ugly history in front of a lot of recruits. Florida has only lost back-to-back games to Tennessee two times. This will be the third since 1970. They have never lost to Tennessee since that 2003 season. They have dominated this matchup. And so a loss, especially an ugly one, if Florida doesn't look much more put together than it did in Salt Lake City against Utah, I would go as far as to say could be something of disaster. It depends really what recruits will have to think at that point. But yes, I think Florida can save itself a lot of drama by winning this game, or at a minimum looking very competitive in a loss.
Program changing and a disaster. That is strong words, Jacob. A lot of us will be watching this closely. Another thing Napier's watching closely, tight ends and safeties. He mentioned back in fall camp, those were the 2 position groups that he was maybe a little bit worried about due to lack of experience. So how is the staff addressing those needs in 2024?
Yeah, this is, Florida is in a position right now where those are 2 of its weaker rooms. And I don't think anybody on its coaching staff would deny that. Billy Napier throughout fall camp said that they do need to be better at tight end and safety specifically. And so far in the 2024 class, they've done quite a good job at that. Amir Jackson is a 4-star tight end. He is a part of the group right now. There are a large number of defensive backs who are in the class, some of whom are capable of playing that safety position. And Florida just needs to continue to do what it's doing on the trail. But as we just talked about, a lot of that will come down to how good it can be on the field. I think that there are recruits who are evaluating performance, things like how Florida is incorporating its tight ends and how successful its defense can be in its first season under Austin Armstrong. Those are things that we're hearing will matter to kids who maybe aren't as solidified about their decisions yet and need to see a little bit more. And so Florida, like any other position, will have to continue to bolster at tight end and safety. And of course, performance will matter in dictating how that goes moving forward.
Now, Florida currently has the number 3 class in the 2024 team recruiting rankings. Given the struggles we talked about against Napier's success against ranked teams, against their main rivals, how much pressure is on him this weekend to show some type of progress to keep this class together?
Well, Grace, like I said, I think that this is a weekend of showing one of 2 things. Either a victory over a ranked opponent, which would be very significant for this Gator team, or, like I said, showing a clean, put together, much more cohesive, lack of penalty performance in what could be a loss to the number 11 team in the country. There's no denying that Tennessee is good and well regarded nationally. And so there is no pressure for Florida to win this game necessarily, but progress is paramount, and especially in front of so many recruits who know that Florida is in a rebuild year. It will take time to get the team back to where I think fans expect it to be, where this coaching staff expects it to be. And it's not a secret that they're not there yet. And so is the expectation for Florida to go out and get a win this weekend? No. Would that be beneficial? Of course. But in terms of looking polished, that is a must. And Florida must demonstrate improvement relative to what we saw in week 1 against Utah.
Jacob, we talked about some of the recruits visiting Gainesville this weekend, whether they're there or not. Are there any recruits that you think have a potential to flip to Florida?
Well, I'll circle back to the guy who I mentioned at the top here, and that's Jeremiah Smith, 5-star wideout. Florida is very interested in him, as I'm sure many schools are right now, given his status as one of the best players in the country. Just an elite player and somebody who would really help Florida's offense. But again, it is a flip. Likely, I'm not sure. Is it possible? I think it is. And Florida will push until pen hits paper with him in Ohio State.
All right, Jacob Rudner with the latest from Gainesville. Thanks so much for joining us. And for more on Gator football news and recruiting, Be sure you subscribe to swamp247.com, the latest on Gator football and recruiting all season long. We got some breaking news. Staying in the Sunshine State, Miami has just picked up a commitment from 5-star defensive lineman Armando Blount. That is according to our 24/7 Sports Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. For more information on this commitment, you can check him out on 247sports.com. Cooper, real quick, you got a scouting report on this guy?
Yeah, he's an absolute freak. I mean, one of my favorite guys to evaluate, especially off the edge. 2025, some murmurs about that he might reclassify to 2024, and that would be huge news for Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes. This is a guy who can be a difference maker. You pair him up with guys like Ruben Baines, Collins, Aki, and Pong. Miami, love what they're doing on the defensive line. Shout out Jason Taylor over there.
Lots of momentum in South Florida, and there's lots of momentum here at the 24/7 Sports Network as well. Here's what the boss man says. When we at 24/7 Sports set a goal of owning college football, we knew we needed to add an expert in recruiting, transfer portal, and roster management to add to an already sensational staff, which is why we are so excited to announce we found the perfect person for the job, and that is Smoke Dixon joining us live on set. Your first day here at 24/7 Sports. Former collegiate and professional athlete, you got a wealth of knowledge from your time working in front offices. Let me see if I got this right. Citadel, Buffalo Bills, XFL, Vanderbilt, and Maryland.
Got it all.
All right, now you're on the dark side, joining the media. No, I'm just kidding. It's all good here.
side.
Yeah, what are you looking forward to in this next chapter?
I'm just sharing my life story, sharing a lot of information I have inside this trapped head, and making sure that we can convey that to the audience.
Smoke, portal, NIL, uncapped official visits, right? College football, it's as crazy as it's ever been. So how hard is it for you in your old position doing what you had to do, and put yourself in that position for us and tell us what's it like to be a GM in college football right now?
Well, it's managing the roster for the first part of it, right? So you got to understand the landscape of the NIL, right? Which is a salary cap without a salary cap. So you're just dealing with a lot of different and fluid situations where there are no rules, and it's a cowboy town, it's a wild, wild west. And then you touch on roster management, retention. You're losing 30% of your roster every single year. And that's through the transfer portal, and that's through graduation. So how do you retain the good players on your team from hitting the portal? And how do you keep the guys that are in the middle of the pack that's going to keep your culture and your roster building for the next few years? So it's a difficult task, but you have to have a foundation of culture and also have the understanding of developing the talent once you get in and retaining it.
Now, Smoke, you played at Paint Branch High School in Montgomery County, Maryland. What most people might not know is that you played alongside Darnell Dockett. I think this video looks a little familiar to you. And there you go. You're right there in number 2. An internet legend, one of the most intimidating high school players ever. I mean, what kind of memories is this bringing back for you?
Well, you know what? It's a great memory because that night, I think we put like 50-something points on Churchill. And that's one of the nights that Donnie just went, Donnie, that's what we used to call it. He just had one of those ball games where everyone that lined up across from him didn't want it anymore. All I had to do was just stay there, score a couple of touchdowns, and just beat a calf alongside the hefty calf.
By the way, everyone, Smoke was the MVP on this team. We're talking about like an absolute monster. You were the MVP.
Humble brag, you know, I was one of those guys that kind of just stayed below the radar. And just like I just said, I was a great compliment to a great teammate. And I would love to say that's the best football player I played with in my entire life.
That's awesome. But by the way, you're not the only former high school athlete on this desk. Cooper, you apparently tore it up back in your day as a wide receiver. I think we have some video here.
Oh, don't show that. Oh, my goodness.
Smoke, I would love to get your assessment. Oh,
look at the high point.
High point. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
well,
man.
let's talk first about the swag. The jersey is a little bit too big, right?
That's a school problem. That's not a me problem.
Well, we had some rules how you had to tuck that in. But listen, wet game. Let me see how you do it when catching the ball.
Hey, too easy. 2 hands in the breadbasket right here. I can't believe we put this on. I should have known our producer, Aaron Grisham, was going to go and do something like this. Hey, and guess what? If you go to the YouTube version of this, they actually got a little Limp Bizkit in the background. So it's trust me. For your viewing pleasure.
Yeah. Smoke, do you think you could strap him up out there? Who wins that one-on-one?
You got it. Right? This is my first day on the job. I don't want to cause any ruckus or make any crazy statements. Now, you got me.
I just turned 31, man. My back's starting to hurt.
Man,
I think
I'm
you got me.
turning 43 in October. So I don't think I got anything coming this way.
I got to say, Smoke, I found this old article about, it looks like a player profile from when you committed to Alabama. And look, you said it earlier, humble brag. You're talking about why they call you Smoke. Your 40 time was a 4:21?
At one point.
At one
point. That's why I gained the name Smoke.
That's insane.
Right? I used to let little blazing trails of smoke behind me when I got loose a couple of times.
I believe it. This quote from you, though, you had to have been like, what, 18, I guess?
17, 18 years old.
Yeah. You say, I consistently run a 4.3, and that's in my regular tennis shoes.
Well, back then when you didn't have the social media, you had to create your own fandom.
Of course.
Create your own story. And I was a big fan of Deion Sanders, Ricky Henderson. That's why I named my brother Ricky. And I understood the ability to apply pressure and gain talent and also be able to sell yourself. And I thought I did a decent job of it. And every time you took a mic in front of my face, I gave you a quote.
One more question for you. Going back to Darnell Dockett, you guys both went to big-time programs, FSU and Alabama. That was kind of a first at the time for kids coming out of Montgomery County. How does that feel, kind of being a part of that change?
You know, Donnie and I would like to say we started that trend of guys out of the DMV area, the metropolitan area, going down south and allowing other teams to come back up north to recruit guys, along with Mike Loxley when he went down to Florida and started getting all the attention up to the DMV area. So we like to, give ourselves a little humble brag and pat ourselves on the back, but we're probably two of the trendsetters, or three of the trendsetters for having five-star athletes go down south and play pretty well.
I think all the humble brags are allowed. We're super excited for all the knowledge you're going to bring to us. You saw his resume up on the screen, the game tape. It's going to be a fun time.
Man, I'm ready.
Yeah, let's go. All right, before we get out of here, Coop, a question for you with that breaking news of Armando Blount's commitment to Miami. What are the chances that he reclassifies, do you think?
I think pretty good. I mean, when you look at this guy, physically he's everything that you want. I think when you turn on the tape, it's hard to remember that he's only a junior in high school. So he's got his best football ahead of him. I think for Miami, you see the way they're playing right now. They're getting after it defensively under new defensive coordinator Lance Gendry. So this guy, from a physical standpoint, I think he is ready to play. I'm not going to make the jump that he's ready to play as a freshman, but this is going to be a guy that I don't think is going to have any problem acclimating to college football sooner rather than later. So I would say, listen, if I was in Miami's corner, I'd say, let's get this guy into school as soon as possible.
All right, and just a reminder, more analysis on that commitment in Miami's recruiting class on 247sports.com. That's going to do it for us here on the College Football Recruiting Show. For Cooper Patagna, our new Smoke Dixon, I'm Grace Remington. We'll see you guys back here Monday. Have a great night.